Calling our meeting to order at 5 p.m. for our CRA board meeting. At this time, we will ask Mr. Ben Janke, our CRA director, to come forward.
Good afternoon. Is it okay?
Good afternoon.
Agenda item number 3, or do you want to start with public commentary? Or?
Yes. All right, is there any public commentary for the CRA? Mr. Walker.
By chance, it's the CRA, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I attended the last CRA meeting. I was former chairman of the CRA.
If you give us your name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry, my fault. I don't do that. I was chairman of the CRA advisory board a long time ago. And it came across in the budget time looking at a thing called, for the police, tag readers. And the tag readers were brought up in the CRA, and they wanted us to contribute to that fund. It was a very, very vivid discussion, very accurate by 2 individual ladies, and they brought up salient points. The salient point was this. This was an invasion of the privacy of the people. And they felt that the CRA didn't have the, I won't use the word audacity, but didn't have the right to contribute to this because at that time this was a brand new theory. Nobody had expressed how it was going to be worked, and they didn't like it, and they shut it down. And we made sure in our bylaws that when things happen like that, a representative would always be at a CRA meeting from the committee, whether it was the chairman or the deputy. Then that process was brought up. Fast forward to now, I take a look at it, and I attended the CRA advisory board meeting via landline, and they brought it up again. Luckily, the same 2 ladies were there, and they were adamant and understand why this is still going on. We voted it down. They voted it down again. Then we see it in the budget. Next year, it'll be increased. And they had the same reasoning for not approving this. What happens here is it gets in the budget, nobody knows about it, nobody talks about it, and you approve it, and then 2 years down the line, you say, how did that get approved? And they're questioning it again. And I said to them, I said, you better have somebody there to speak up. Well, as a citizen, and giving you a little history about this, these people, citizens of Lynn Haven, on an advisory board, were against this. If you are in favor of it, why the heck do you have an advisory board? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Any additional public commentary for CRA? Right. Mr. Janke.
Good afternoon. I'd like to mention under the CRA Director's report that we had a change order recently as part of the CRA sidewalk project on 3rd and 17th Street. In the amount of $10,400, we discovered a few items out in the field during construction that were not listed in the construction plans. Some handrails needed to be installed, and also a trench drain needed to be installed to improve the drainage in some areas. And that's the reason of this change order. In case you're looking at the actual amount that was paid to the contractor versus the original purchase order, there's a slight increase. It happens, and I just wanted to bring this to the board's attention.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Janke about anything?
Yeah, so what Mr. Walker brought up, was that voted down for the tag readers he was talking about from the CRA?
Yes, and that Mr. Walker kind of went ahead. It's I wanted to brief the CRA board on this during the budget discussion, item number 6, yes. But to answer your question, we had a CRA advisory board meeting last Friday. We talked about the proposed projects for the upcoming fiscal year. And the vote was, the response of the advisory board was that they approved or they recommend all of the projects on the list except the tag readers.
That was this only for this budget, or was it for last year's budget too?
For this budget. Last year's budget was the same, and the meeting minutes were included in the budget discussion last year.
Okay, I just wasn't aware of it. I just figured that was something to be brought up to us, that it was voted down. I mean, not that I'm against the tag readers being in the CRA, because I would imagine that the tag readers are all in the CRA area, but, okay.
And just for clarification, there's a certain process I go through whenever I recommend or whenever I start the list of projects that I would recommend to the CRA board for, for approval. And the first question really is this proposed project somehow, somewhere listed in the CRA plan? This is really the foundation of the Lynn Haven CRA. This plan was designed, or not designed, was drafted in 2003 and is really gives me guidance as the CRA director to identify projects where I should be spending, where the CRA board should be spending the funds on, what kind of projects, how to improve our CRA area. And if you take a look here on page 53, it clearly says, whenever possible, increase the visibility of the police force in the area to prevent crime. So it is mentioned in the CRA plan that we can use CRA funds on supporting the police force activities. Just wanted to kind of clarify this. So this is not coming out of nowhere.
I get that. I just wish that was brought to our attention, because since it is an advisory board, it's nice to know that information, that they voted on it, and if it was voted down, then that recommendation should come to us, and then we make a decision on that.
Yes.
But I was never aware of it. Did I miss something?
They just had that meeting on Friday.
Friday
Well,
afternoon.
I get that, but I'm talking the one last year. I don't remember that.
Well, there was some discussion on it last year. So last
So
year,
just this year.
we had this same discussion last year on this very issue. Mr. Walker brought it up last year
Yes, he did.
before we voted on it. So, and we still voted yes because Mr. Janke showed us how it is a part of the CRA's plan to assist the police department. Now, last year, when it was brought to our attention, it wasn't so much a mention about invasion of privacy as much as should we be supporting something for the police department? Should CRA funds be used for the police department? Was the discussion last year. Not so much was it invasion of privacy, was it violating anyone's constitutional right? And so when Mr. Janke showed us in the plan as he's doing now that, hey, there is room in the CRA to support law enforcement, and we're putting these tag readers in the CRA that's not going up 77 beyond the CRA limits, then we as a commission decided yes, we would support this as part of the budget and move forward. So that was a discussion last year.
So last year it didn't get voted down?
No.
Okay. From the CRA board? Okay.
So, but yeah, there was discussion about it as we're discussing it now, and we just said we'll move forward. All right, any other questions of Mr. Janke?
I do. All right, in the meeting that you had on Friday, do you generally take all of the recommendations from this advisory committee?
Yes, I'm not filtering out any recommendations. We take meeting minutes, and they're shared with the CRA board. Yes.
And for the new commission, in case you don't know, because we don't have very many CRA meetings, we are the CRA board. All right. So I think we know that, but just for clarification, we have the advisory committee, and then they bring those recommendations to us, and Mr. Janke brings that to us, and then we make the decisions for the CRA. So we're commissioners on one side and CRA board on the other side. So whenever he makes reference to CRA board, that's us. Any other questions for Mr. Janke? All right, moving on to the consent agenda, approval of the meeting minutes from May 23rd, 2023. Approval of the CRA residential paint program applications for 1603 Alabama Avenue. Any concerns about that? All right, is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Perno, second by Commissioner Vandegrift. City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift?
Yes.
Commissioners Peebles?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes, motion passed. New business discussion and possible action to adopt a tentative CRA budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024. All right, so we've reviewed the budget. We talked about this previously. Mr. Janke has answered, numerous questions for us. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Janke and regarding the CRA budget?
I'll ask the obvious question. Is the additional funds for the readers, is it well within your budget?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think one of the things, I guess, also for clarification is that if we don't spend the money in the
spend it.
CRA, do we lose the money for that year for the CRA?
Well, it goes back into reserve, so we wouldn't be directly losing it. We would be reallocating it for another
You're just
project.
required to budget all those funds on something. You don't necessarily lose them, but you need to
Okay.
budget them every year on something.
So I guess if we don't spend what we've budgeted, then that goes back into reserve.
Right, and then the next year you budget on something else. Right.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Janke?
I do. Being new, I don't quite understand if we have a committee that's supposed to review and make recommendations, and they've made the recommendations, and we still move forward even against what the committee that's supposed to be assisting you, isn't that
Well, that's really us, though. That's not Mr. Janke.
We've done it before.
Yeah. So that's really for us.
I understand that we vote on it, but there is a committee. It's
Right.
kind of like, the planning committee, for example.
Right,
They
but
come to us, they make recommendations.
Right.
Yep.
But I'm saying that falls on us. That doesn't fall on Mr. Janke. So Mr. Janke can only say, this is my budget. The committee approved it or didn't approve it. Hey, here's my budget. This is what was said. It's up to us to decide whether or not we're going to move forward with it. So he doesn't necessarily take it out of his budget or take it off of his agenda or his planning item because the advisory board said, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. And sometimes he does make those adjustments, but he comes to us with, hey, this is what I recommend. This is what the advisory board recommends. And then we have to make that decision on it. Just like the planning board, we have to still, Ms. Amanda still makes the presentation that this development application went in. And if the advisory board says no, she doesn't say, I can't present this because the advisory board said no, that you shouldn't approve this development order. She gives us the recommendations of the advisory board. Then we have to decide whether or not we make that, we move forward with the advisory board's recommendation or against the advisory board's recommendation.
Well, is it the police department that has made this request?
Yes.
Well, we have this unit in the country club, and we were very appreciative. And I appreciate the chief bringing it to the country club area, because we were having some problems with vandalism and theft. And so it's worked out well for us, a residential community. I was just interested about the process of the advisory
Sure.
committee. And I understand.
But I think that's the process for every advisory committee, where the director has an advisory committee that is composed of citizens, but then they still bring us, or either to the city manager, depending on what that advisory committee is. Like Parks and Recreation, a lot of times they go straight to the city manager, and then those recommendations are still brought to us and can say, this is what they advise or not advise. So just clarifying that the director or the staff is not making decisions against what the advisory committee has recommended. They're just making their presentation, and it's still up to us. Because sometimes the planning commission or an advisory committee has said, yes, let's do this. But then once citizens come to us here in this session, then we say, no, we're not going to do that. So we've gone against, pro or con, what some advisory committees have recommended. But we do try to take seriously as a commission what the advisory committee recommends as well.
Mayor, may I ask Ben, what was the main concern for the advisory board? Because I think one of the things, and we talked about this morning, is that them having all of the information, and at that particular time, didn't know that that was going to be one of the issues. And my recommendation was to also, when we have these conversations, is to have the police chief there to give some background information and why they're used and how they're used. And so, Mayor, if you don't mind, that conversation we had this morning, I'd like to just share with the public about the tag reader.
Yes.
When last year we talked about this as well, and so when I made the recommendation about putting the 4 cameras in the CRA, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I reached out to Panama City. Panama City has 63 cameras. 40 of them are paid for by the CRA to protect the CRA. So that's why I made the recommendation to Ben. I have never spoke in front of this committee before. These tag readers have solved hundreds of crimes. And it's like having 4 extra eyes out there with a photographic memory. If you go by it, it's going to get your tag. A recent case, 2 Fridays ago, we had a female that was pushed inside of a vehicle, and someone called 911 after she was battered by her husband, so we thought we had a kidnapping. All we had was a white Blazer, 4-door Blazer Chevrolet. Within 4 minutes, we had the tag number to that vehicle, and it was stopped on 23rd Street by Panama City Police Department. Remember, inside the CRA, there are 3 banks, there are 3 drugstores, a grocery store, and multiple restaurants. If we want to continue to make the city of Lynn Haven one of the safest cities in the state of Florida, I would love to go talk to this committee and make them understand. You see it in your end of shift reports, where Bayrock or this, that all comes through those tag readers. And we have one more that the police department pays for because we didn't have 389 covered. We have every north, south, east, and west entrance covered coming into our city. That doesn't include the sex offenders and the sexual predators that we know that are in the city within seconds. So I strongly suggest to you that if these questions come up, I'm available 24/7. Ben can put me on speakerphone with that committee. But again, we're not reinventing the wheel. He just read to you what the rules were. That's why I brought that recommendation to Ben, because Panama City was already all over it. Again, they have 63 and 40 are being paid for by the CRA to protect their city. Any questions?
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
So I just want to recap, make sure I got this right. The CRA advisory board, is that what you call it, advisory board? Their recommendation was no on the budget.
Yes, that's correct.
And their reason for no was, the only reason for no was because of the tag ID readers, and their concern was invasion of privacy.
No. Their concern was that it should come out of the city's budget.
Okay.
So I think what Mr. Walker said, that was his opinion earlier in the meeting. He's not representing the advisory board. Unfortunately, the chairwoman of the CRA advisory board was not able to make it today. She had a time conflict. But Mr. Walker is not representing this advisory board.
Okay. But that was the only reason they voted it down, was the tag readers.
Yes, and I
Okay.
have this reflected in the meeting minutes from the advisory
Okay.
board.
right,
And
thank
that
you.
was the same issue the last time, was who should be paying for the tag readers? That
Right.
should the CRA be paying for the tag readers, or should the city be paying for the tag readers? And then,
That'd be the only issue. It's not a privacy, you gotta remember, these are vehicles, they're in public right of way, in public view. So it's not like you're putting a camera inside somebody's private garage or backyard.
Right.
It's all public view and it's criminal justice purposes. So I think the only discussion is whether city pays for it or CRA. pays
Correct.
for it.
Right, yep,
yeah.
understood.
Any additional questions? Any questions from the public? Public commentary? All right, is there a motion for this?
Motion to approve.
Second,
Motion by Commissioner Perno, second by Commissioner Warwick. City Manager, if you call the vote.
Commissioner Perno?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
yes.
Commissioner Vandegrift?
Yes.
Commissioner Peebles?
Yes.
Mayor Nelson?
Yes, motion passed. Meeting adjourned. See you at 5:30.